Dear guests, dear panelists, welcome to our last panel discussion, which is called Smart Fintech Solutions. So last but not least, thank you for staying with us till the very end. I would like to introduce very shortly our speakers. So today with us we have Azizjon Azimi, who is representing the AI startup, which is zypl.ai. Also we have Natia. Natia Gvazava, who is Chief Legal Officer, and she's representing Identomat. And also we have here Rafal Trepka, who is General Manager of Central Asia of Mastercard. So today we will be discussing one of the industries that received a significant acceleration due to the COVID, due to the pandemic. And today we are going to talk about fintech industry. So fintech has become one of the fastest growing sector of the digital economy. So artificial intelligence plays a very significant role in the fintech industry. And my first question I would like to address to our first guest, Azizjon, and I would like to ask Azizjon to share, based on your hands-on experience, building such a successful startup, and tell us what role artificial intelligence plays in fintech.
Awesome. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I know it's the end of the day. You guys are all probably thinking about dinner. Me too. But we got to get through this together. We prepared well for it. So thank you, Daria, for the question. Awesome to be on the same panel with Rafal and Natia. Let me tell you a little bit about zypl.ai and what we do. I want to stand up a bit because it's the end of the day and I don't want to be on the same panel with people who have much more experience than me. I'll tell you about zypl.ai and what we do. We work with synthetic AI for microfinance. Let me break that down for a second. So I know this clicker always has problems. Okay. First of all, let's talk about microfinance. Microfinance is massive. It's a $200 billion a year industry that is extremely traditional, old-fashioned, old school, and it is mostly prevalent in developing countries, which means that countries that tend to be low income are the ones that tend to have the highest microfinancing shares. If you look at the number of MFO players, there's about 10,000 of them globally. 10,000 microfinance organizations working in the most remote villages and rural areas of the world. And annually, they serve about 200 million people. So these 200 million people are people who usually are not the bank segment. They're not the urban hipsters. They're not the urban salaried employees. These are farmers. These are unbanked youth. These are informal employees, people from Jakarta to the streets of Kuala Lumpur, from the villages of Argentina to the deserts of Sahara. And those people need access to finance, whether it's a small business that's trying to get capital for farming, or it's a person who's trying to make ends meet with a personal loan. So what are the problems in this very massive industry? There's really three main problems. Number one, high operational costs. Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Prize laureate who created microfinance, he came up with this model of going to the most rural places and providing small capital for specific purposes. In order to do that, you need to be present, right, physically. So most microfinance organizations end up opening offices in remote areas. And that means high operational cost. But guess what? If you have high operational cost, that ends up being baked into the interest rate. So the end consumer has to pay a higher interest rate because there's large operational costs. The answer is obviously digitize. Second, low financial inclusion. Despite the fact that these microfinance organizations have served large swaths of people, there's actually even more people who are left outside of the industry because they lack a credit history. And traditionally, people who have a credit history have been the ones who have been banked. So the question is, how do you bank the unbanked? That's the real challenge that we're trying to tackle. And third, and I would say most important problem that we're targeting is volatility. I remember February 24th very well of this year when the war started in Ukraine, the morning the Russian bombs started going off in Ukraine. I got a calls from a few bankers who were using our AI scoring software. And their response was, we got to cut lending. Do not lend. Stop it. And you ask them like, why? Their response is, we don't know what the hell is going to happen. We have no clue. There's a war going on. And look at Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, countries that have at least 25% of their GDPs coming from remittances. So what you have is, in developing countries that have microfinancing, usually there's very large dependence on macroeconomics, right? It can be remittances, can be exports, can be imports, but the fact is, if you have a crisis in a large economy, then odds are the developing countries around it are going to have volatility. So this world needs stability. How are we helping out? This clicker actively doesn't want me to help. Okay, what do? So our solution is that we apply synthetic scores in order to unlock access to finance for the unbanked. What does that mean? Let me break it down. So first of all, our target market is the unbanked. Unbanked people who are currently out of the microfinancing. To do that, in order to unlock access to financing, you need alternative data. That's what many companies have done globally, be it Upstart in the US or the likes of zypl.ai, etc. So we're not the coolest ones in the game. But now we're becoming the coolest ones. How? We are using synthetic data generation to enrich the data that our partners have. One of the biggest challenges we've discovered while working with microfinance organizations is that they have low quality of data, and a lot of times they don't even have a digital database, right? They use different systems for different operations. So what do you do in a case like that? You use synthetic data where your models are creating data which they're then trained on and are then deployed in the real world. So by applying synthetic data and building credit scores on synthetic AI, that's how we're differentiating ourselves globally, right? We're trying to say no data AI, and we're one of the pioneers in the world to put out that hypothesis. Now, what's our story? I myself was born and raised in Tajikistan. I moved to the United States at the age of 11. I won a global Olympiad to go to the US. I went to high school in New York, did my undergrad at NYU. Later, I did an MBA at Stanford and an MPP at Harvard. And I worked in consulting. I've experienced the United Nations. And I ended up coming back to Tajikistan last year to build zypl.ai because I believe that you don't have to go to Silicon Valley for all things. I was there for a few years. I was privileged to get a scholarship from Phil Knight. And what I can tell you is that if you're able to pick a world where you have the most impact, don't limit it to just the bubble of Silicon Valley, right? You can build cool startups in Central Asia. And we're trying to prove that with our example. So in the beginning, we got a grant from the Islamic Development Bank to launch our AI lab. First, we built an academy to train people in ML. And then we figured, okay, now we have really cool ML talent, some of whom are in the room today. And based on that ML talent, let's start building products afterward. And we just came back from Astana for 3 months. We were at Astana Hub, completing the Google for Startups Accelerator. Massive shout out to Astana Hub. They gave an incredible opportunity for us to grow. Okay, what is our solution? We are providing a software solution, software as a service. And I actually agree with Steve, who yesterday gave an amazing talk, where he said, don't just focus on outsourcing. When you're focusing on outsourcing, you're competing in a very saturated market. If you're focusing on SaaS, be it AI SaaS, virtual reality, etc., that's where you can build a niche. And that's what Tajikistan is doing. I'll tell you more about that at the end. First of all, we build synthetic data to enrich your data set. So if you're a bank, you're a microfinance institution, we first enrich your data. Second, we customize to your risk appetite. So we try to understand what are your business goals, right? Because scoring by itself isn't valuable. It only brings value when it's applied for a goal. Reduction in non-performing loan rate, increase in approval rate, cut down on operational cost. So we try to customize to what is the exact need of the partner. And third, macro data. Once we include macroeconomic data, we're able to count for that volatility. We're able to provide stability because the models we're training, they aren't trained just on historical data, right? If you build models on historical data, you will just reproduce historical problems. You can't do that. That's not a technically sound approach. So in our case, when we train our models on synthetic data, we include macroeconomic factors, be it inflation, currency rate, remittances, etc., that allow the model to simulate different conditions, right? And that way the model is more stable when a black swan like February 24th hits. Okay, let's keep going. What is the functionality? We provide a credit decision. So based on the risk appetite, we make a decision on each loan application, yes or no. We have explainability, which is very important for AI. One of the biggest stereotypes that we gotta fight is that AI is unexplainable. We fight it because every time our AI makes a decision, it provides a weight of evidence. We provide in detail what's the weight of each variable on the decision. And last, recommendation system. If we're rejecting a loan, we're providing a recommendation for our microfinance partners under which, loan amount or duration, this person could still get a loan. So the goal is try to maximize the access to finance. Traction. So we have 10 enterprise clients in 4 markets. These are banks, microfinance organizations. Currently, we're live in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, issuing loans already in these 3 markets. And we're entering Kyrgyzstan very soon. And next on our plate is Middle East. So to go global, we're going to the Middle East. We've issued over $9 million in microloans to over 10,000 consumers. That's a pretty big portfolio. And we've achieved 0.7% NPL rate in the last year. So that's a full portfolio, right? It's vintage. It's not just the latest data of the latest month. It's actually vintage data on the whole portfolio. And we just closed our pre-seed. So we're super lucky that we raised $1.1 million from 12 institutional investors. Our main investors are Presto Ventures. It's a Czech fund based in Czech Republic. They are a major B2B SaaS investor. We also have Battery Road Digital, which is the VC arm of Prince Street Capital, an American hedge fund / VC. And Aloka Ventures. So we have an Uzbek investor as well on our cap table. And we were valued at $10 million in our first round. And our goal is obviously to multiply that by 4 to 5 times next year once we go for our seed round. Again, at the point on Astana Hub, we were super lucky because when you think of accelerators, right, they're meant to increase your sales, they're meant to increase your processes, that's all amazing. But like Astana Hub did something amazing for us. They actually gave us an opportunity to present to President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. And when you have a platform like that as a young entrepreneur, you see that you can bring important things on the agenda, right? So for that, I'm incredibly thankful for the accelerator that we attended, the Silkway Accelerator. And I want to finish with a note about Tajikistan. So outsourcing, again, is important, it's great, but in September of this year, the president of Tajikistan signed our national AI strategy, which is the first in Central Asia. It's a document that was part of my diploma, master's thesis at Harvard. We worked for 1 year on it, and we're super lucky that Tajikistan became the pioneer in this sphere. So we look into AI in our country not just as some fancy tool that will attract media. We actually don't really care about it. We look into AI as a potential for leapfrog. That this is an industry where machine learning, computer vision, NLP, etc., can help us leapfrog growth and become a regional leader. And the government is behind this vision. So we're trying to build something global, being based in Tajikistan, not Silicon Valley. And I hope to prove that it is possible. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, Azizjon, for this great story, for this inspiring story. I hope we will get back to you with some questions from the audience at the end of our session. And now I would like to pass the floor to Natia Gvazava. So she represents, as I mentioned, Identomat. So this is AI KYC powered and identity verification tool. But she also has got extensive experience in banking. So I would like to ask Natia to share her opinion on how innovation influences banking sphere, and what is the role of banks in the post-fintech era. So please share your thoughts.
Hello everyone, it's an honor to be here. Can everyone hear me? I will try to be quick and finish this panel as soon as possible, if Rafal agrees. No, it's a joke. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's difficult, it's the end of the day and everyone is in a hurry to get to dinner, so I will try to be brief. It's my 3rd time with StrategEast speaking on the panel. It's becoming a little hobby of mine to be here every year, so next year, guys, please don't forget to invite me. I've been with Identomat for 3 years now. Basically, I joined the company before we started our sales to the industry, and it was the beginning of the pandemic. What we do is the AI-based document recognition, document reader, face identification, remote KYC, remote KYB. Eventually, what this does for banking, financial sector, even gambling sector, and also now emerging because of the increasing crypto compliance requirements, we provide at least 20% reduction in operational costs that are related to identification of the clients. And as Jonathan mentioned on previous sessions, after pandemic, life will never be the same, and this is especially true for the banking and finance services, because people don't want to go to the bank anymore. They want to receive all the services that are possibly receivable remotely to be delivered to their homes, to their computers, to their gadgets, to their devices. And since devices are such an integral part of our lives nowadays, we are trying to make our system available on all the platforms that are there. And our capabilities are expanding even to the sanctions checks, etc., etc. When we were, well, actually, when I left the National Bank of Georgia after 10 years of being the general counsel there, I was faced with a choice between a large bank that, one of the largest banks that operates now in Georgia and listed on a London Stock Exchange, and a small company which was only like 12 people at that point, which was Identomat, and I chose for Identomat because I see the future in there. Of course, regulations are an issue, but I think that there are many ways to look at the regulations, and the best way to do it is to look at the opportunities. And when we were starting to sell the product, it was the time when new fintech regulations were being introduced and tested in Georgia. And when we were discussing with Zurab, our co-founder and the CEO, who is now sitting in the audience, whether we shall go for Georgian market or maybe we should aim for global market, I said to them that Georgian regulator is a well-reputed regulator. They are conservative, they have high standards, they have new regulations, innovative approaches, and good personnel. Of course, one way to look at the regulations is to perceive them as innovation killers and progress killers. But I choose to look at the regulations as opportunities, because they usually leave the window where you can fit innovation, and it's up to you to fit the standard. And as soon as we became operational on Georgian financial market, it opened the door for us to, claim that, listen, the National Bank of Georgia trusts us, and now we can sell our product to you, and we will meet your regulations, we will comply with GDPR, we will provide you the service that you need, we will provide the features that you need, and we will work on the features that you might see as requiring some tweaking. So basically, the regulation that was introduced gave us the opportunity to. It was like a passport, like we are waiving these regulations, we are satisfying these standards, and now it's up to you to choose us. And yes, fintech is a challenge for regulators, and fintech is a challenge for fintech companies themselves, because fintech is about artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is about data, and for us, it's many times large amounts of personal data, and most of the time it's biometrics, and there are a lot of ethical and legal issues that need to be addressed before you can build a viable and, most importantly, a trustworthy product. Because if you are not trustworthy, the bank will not, the client will not allow you to access their client's data. So again, when we speak of the regulations and fintech, this framework that the regulators provide in the form of sandboxes or innovation hubs or innovation, opportunities that they create in the regulations, this is something that also creates trust for the market, and creates opportunity for you to grow your business as well, because if you are not trustworthy for your own regulator, then other clients will not trust you. So this is basically how we proceeded with our business. We have grown quite big since then. We have raised 3.2 million in seed funding. And our client base is growing, and it's mainly financial industries and gambling and now crypto industries. As to the banks and large financial institutions, whether they will be in the market in 10 years, I think that with the financial resources that they have opportunity to hire good people, good staff, and they have the opportunity to know what's going to come. So they are smart enough to invest in fintech. They're smart enough to implement fintech in their global daily operations, and they will do that. If they don't, it's most certain that they will die out. So for those who do not embrace fintech as a part of their operations, it's going to be a challenge to continue operating. So this basically concludes my introduction. I'm open to questions from audience in the end and also from the participants.
Thank you. Thank you, Natia, for sharing your story and for sharing your expertise with us. So now I would like to pass the mic to Rafal, and as I mentioned, he represents Mastercard. So my question to Rafal is, so what is the role of Mastercard in helping fintechs rise? And also, could you please share, in your opinion, what is the future for payments?
Daria, thank you very much for invitation. Thank you, StrategEast. Great to be with you here. I have a pleasure to take care of Mastercard in Central Asia, being based in Kazakhstan, but also responsible for Uzbekistan and other markets. Answering the question about the fintechs and the future, let's say, looking at the audience, I see there are some different IT providers for the different partners, some fintechs and others. So I will do my best in this short part, split it into two. So talk briefly about Mastercard. I just have one slide which I want to use as a supportive for the second part. And the second part as well, explain a bit how are we working with the banks. Our partners are mainly banks in the different markets. So maybe some of the ideas to make it even easier for you to talk to the banks, to find some customers, to actually push them even to the certain solutions. So firstly about Mastercard. So I mean, normally I can also say Mastercard is one of the, let's say, oldest fintechs with more than 50 years of experience. At the end, it is a technology company in the payment industry. One part is not here on the slides, but again, I encourage any fintech as well, look at for example, corporates, how they grow, and what is important. I mean, we have seen the nice presentation before, but also like, what's your vision, mission, what are your values? So for example, very often it is being very, let's say, appreciated and valued even by the banks, by the different corporates, if you think in the similar way. So for example, from Mastercard perspective, we say our vision is world beyond cash. So if somebody says, okay, who is or what is the competitor for Mastercard, we say cash, and then we see world beyond cash, and therefore you can focus on the much longer term. So vision usually very important. Secondly, mission. So we say, yes, we use all the technology which we have in order for the payments to be very simple, very fast, very convenient, very, very important, very safe. So for you, any transaction is happening in milliseconds, potentially normally in milliseconds, not in seconds, but everything what is going behind this, it's let's say rather a complex process. So again, vision as a world beyond cash, mission as using the technology so any user can very easily, convenient, fast, securely pay in any time and any place in the world. And the last one, I mean, today on the earlier panels we have heard a lot about people, and business is about people. So for us also the company values are very important. And values I would split it into two. So first it's a partnership and trust. Certainly, I would say probably even more valued and valid here in the region, but this partnership and trust with the partners, with the customers, are very important. A second part is accountability, ownership. I would also add agility, and this agility also very important for startups, for fintechs. So again, how do we work? So again, not like a very hierarchical organization. Again, everybody has its own accountability, over certain topics that can move with the speed. So very briefly about, let's say, Mastercard, that again, any fintech can use. On the fintech's startups itself, so here I will talk about this slide, and also why, maybe also one part, why do we talk about fintechs, why we are so engaged and why we are observing what is happening. So for Mastercard, just to again explain very briefly the business. For me, again, looking at Uzbekistan, at any market in Central Asia region or any other markets, for me it's important that people have more, let's say, cards to pay. When I say cards, it can be a physical card, it can be a virtual card, it can be a token in the wallet, it can be any type of the wallet. So most important that they have more of these devices to pay. So we can call it financial inclusion, but that's the important part. But equally important is the whole quality and also the quantity, the places where you can pay. So that's another dimension as well. And of course, once you have the instruments to pay, once you have the places to pay, the whole usage is also very important. So that would be, let's say, again, in a very simplistic manner, these three dimensions are very important. But the whole ecosystem is very important. And then actually when we talk about the whole ecosystem, how to link all the parties, very often fintechs, startups, they come into place. Why? Because I said, for example, virtual cards, it's all about the wallets, it's about the mobile applications, etc. And I said, I see some IT providers as well to the banks. So it's very important, okay, does the bank already have a mobile application that is very easy for the consumer? Maybe not. In this case, they may not have enough IT resources in the bank. I mean, you know better about the microprocessors versus the mono stack or monolith stack in the bank. But very often there, fintechs and startups can come into place. The other part, fintech startups, like we have heard about the microfinance organizations. So when I say banks, I mean wider payment institutions, let's say. But in this case, yes, they can reach out to customers, but for example, they need a better scoring in this case. They need a better user experience. Maybe they need a face recognition, whatever, anything which relates to ID, maybe something related to marketing. And that brings me to this part about the development of the fintechs. So very briefly, I can divide it from looking from the banks into these three pieces. So firstly, fintechs may be in the pay tech area. So already developing different type of wallets. And by the way, in Uzbekistan, in the region, there are already examples in this case, which are directly going into payments, going alone into payments. They don't potentially need to cooperate. Maybe if you are building something like that, maybe you need to cooperate with the bank just for licensing, because, for example, you are not regulated by national bank or any other. So you need a good partner for this core licensing, actually, products and services. Everything else you are going to develop yourself. So this paytech, there are also good examples and good examples already here in the region. But then very important, and this is what I would encourage you to look at any bank, by the way, in case you have any ideas and whatever banks are, call it not listening to you or you don't know whom to reach out, please also reach out to us, maybe we can help, because this enabling, it's very important. As I said, what is the main problem for the banks are mainly resources, and very often these are IT resources. Or maybe they are, but they are very focused on the core different developments, etc. And very often the bank literally has no time, no power, no resources to think about anything else. So you can come with any IT solution. As I said, it can be a mobile applications, it can be anything, let's say, for the better user experience. It may relate for, if it's a bank which is actually making the acquiring, so acquiring for the payments at the merchant location, you can develop a lot of there. And maybe something for the usage, for the campaigns, for anything else. So this enablers, I think, great, let's say, opportunity for you. And by the way, what we have heard the presentation earlier, it's also a big part of enabling microfinance organization to make a quicker scoring, to make a better scoring as well. So this is very important. But on the other side, you can think, oh, by the way, I'm a tech company, but maybe it's a edutech, maybe medtech, maybe it's not a fintech, maybe it's a very different area. So actually I have, let's call it, no option to talk to the banks. I would say let's not have any limiting thinking or behavior, because what is actually, when you look at the banks currently, they are not looking from, oh, by the way, how many customers I have. That's not so much important. Majority of the banks right now, they measure their performance or they measure their customers at least based on MAU, monthly active users. In this case, you need the engagement with the customer. Very often this engagement is not how often you can take a mortgage. It doesn't happen too often. Yes, you have to pay the mortgage, so it can be also engagement. How often do you take a loan for a car or for anything else? This type of engagement, they don't happen too often. So in this case, actually, for this value-added services, you could literally, the sky is even not the limit, because it can be related to loyalty, it can be related to some gaming, it can be just related, how to display certain products and services. It can be just something interesting where you believe a consumer will need this. And by the way, as we have heard, even also recently, also in here in Uzbekistan, that again, different type of fintechs may be developing, and we don't need, for example, dedicated governmental apps. It may be also very easily to deploy governmental services into mobile banking applications, to the user interface to which the user already get used to. So you may have a lot of services, or you can just enable to link, for example, the governmental service with the banking service, that consumer sees everything in the mobile banking applications. So whether enabler or value-added service, and it can be, I would say, any service which just engages customers, I think there is a huge potential for startups, for fintechs to develop in this area. So where we can help, firstly, if you are working on something with any financial institutions, by the way, if you are working with the retailer, with the merchant, that would be interesting for us as well. So if you are already working on some service, please reach out, tell. It would be certainly very interesting for me and my colleagues to hear, and a bit of brainstorm, is there anything we can help? If you have a great idea which is fitting to any of these boxes, but you don't know where to reach out, or for example, maybe you are developing in Uzbekistan, but you want to go to Kazakhstan, or by the way, maybe you are in the region, but you want to go global in this case, because you think it's whatever, nicely it will fit to Germany, France, whatever other region, please also reach out, and maybe there is something we can help. Mastercard additionally has the program related to fintechs and startups, a bit more on the, let's say, more developed stage. It is called, you may go to the website, check startpath.com, or just put a start path Mastercard, and you will find this. Why this is related to the fintechs and startups on the a bit more developed stage? Because I mean, you are potentially good in one market, we can just help it to scale it. So what if the customer from US, from Canada, from France, from any other region say, oh, by the way, I like it, I want to have it deployed tomorrow or whatever in the feasible future, so it cannot be just the beginning. So we have such a program. Daria, just also answer the last part of the question, like where do we see the future? I mean, certainly, we look at payments. So potentially we are also in this, let's say, lucky part and the industry that we like many things. Like as we say, there are things money can buy. For anything else, there is Mastercard. So whatever you look at, whatever you do, at the end, you need to finalize with payments. So for us, this payments is very important. What is a form factor at the end? It literally doesn't matter. Yes, plastic card, it is moving out, but it still fits to a lot of areas. Then we have, as I said, virtual, you have tokens, you have other form factors. But there is this huge trend of, as well, invisible payments. If you look, I mean, you can read yourself about home commerce, about car commerce, or in-car commerce, and many others. So whatever you can do, at the end, you just have to finalize the payment. Whatever, you just left the taxi, and what, you haven't paid? Yes, you paid. It's just that payments is going through afterwards. So certainly, this is one trend. Of course, everything going to digital. We also heard how the pandemic has speed up a lot of processes, but that also is linked with risks, also with the cyber risks in this case. And by the way, these are not only for the consumers, even bigger risk for the companies itself, and companies are sitting on more and more data. So for us, if you look, I mean, at the end, we are also a security company. So if you look at what we do, what is really in our services, we have heard about the AI. We have been also purchasing to our portfolio one of the big, well-developed Brighterion company, which is also helping with the AI and everything which is happening behind transaction. Again, with the purpose that transaction happens in the milliseconds, but it has to be super secure. In this case, and the whole process which is behind this. So I would say certainly going to this, again, payments are there. We like it or not, it has to be with such an experience that we like it. Yes, all the digital services, again, more payment becoming invisible, and anything which relates to the safety, security, even more important than ever before. Okay? I pause here. Later on, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rafal. It was very insightful. And at this point, I would like to open the floor for questions and answers. So at first, we would like to get some questions from the audience. So are there any questions? Are there any questions from the audience? If not, I will ask my questions. Okay. So my question, it will probably be applicable to each of you. So do you think, is Eurasia capable of becoming a sandbox for the fintech industry where the solutions will be rolled in and then implemented in Western countries? So first, Azizjon, would you like to answer the question?
Yes, I think the answer is definitely yes, because if you look in, I'll give you the case of our company, right? So when I came back to Tajikistan, we first spoke to the regulator, the national bank, because without the national bank's implicit, approval, you can't start launching credit decision software for risk, right? It's a very sensitive thing. Banks are, holding money of depositors who are regular consumers. So whenever you have a technology that has some sort of innovation to it, the regulator has to go through the process. And in our case, the national bank initially gave approval for it. And now we have essentially 5 of the leaders of microfinancing in Tajikistan as our clients. And next year, we're going to issue somewhere around $30 million in 1 year with the portfolio that we're getting, which is going to be a sizable portion of the entire microfinancing in the country, right? And now that we're in Uzbekistan, we're in Kazakhstan, we see similar trends. So I think that the way we can win is by becoming a regulatory sandbox where, yes, there needs to be a diligence approach where we kind of, test and especially stress test different technologies. But if we win by being quick, if we go against, the sort of the view that, regulators have to be slow and they have to be bureaucratic, then we might be the ones that actually leapfrog the technologies first. That's the pitch we made in Tajikistan, and so far it's been working well.
Thank you. Natia, what do you think?
To be honest, I don't imagine a negative answer on your question because virtually anywhere you can have a sandbox. As long as regulators create an enabling environment for development and for fintech. And of course, sandbox implies by definition a secure environment whereby the negative effects of the testing cannot go or spill over to the overall market. So thereby it needs to be very closely monitored. But again, when I say closely monitored, I don't mean that the regulators need to be necessarily the killers of the development. They need to allow for certain liberties and certain innovations. And there is huge fear on the side of the regulators, and there is a huge endearing motivation on the side of fintech. So those two need to be arranged in such a manner that they not only coexist, but they also bring benefits to the market in the future. So the answer is definitely yes.
Thank you. Rafal?
So I will also start with the short answer, yes, but let me elaborate. So again, I will be looking from the perspective of the consumers and banks, as I elaborated earlier. So, I mean, here in the region, consumers are similar as the other part of the world. We have the similar needs as whatever consumers in US, in Canada, Asia, Australia, etc. So that's one. Secondly, banks, other institutions, they also need providers, they need the technology, etc. So, and I would even firstly not look at the sandbox, because anybody can open the company and think, oh, but I just provide these services, and I'm going to provide it in Uzbekistan, in Tajikistan, or Kazakhstan, and I can do it. Of course, if I have to go for a certain regulatory parts, I have to go. But otherwise, I can be just an IT company providing certain services in this case. The region is great and it's huge. However, we calculate, somebody can say 60, 70 million. If you add some other countries, it's already 100 million. So you almost like you don't have to go too far to already find a lot of consumers or a lot of other partners to which you can deliver. And this can be actually, I would treat this as a sandbox where you can actually, or the test box, or the test area or pilot area, and out of that you can really expand, because you can much easier showcase certain examples. So again, I would rather encourage for that. As for the sandboxes itself, I mean, it's great. There are IT parks, there are financial centers, etc., because they just accelerate. So they may have preferential rules for the registration, for taxation, for jurisdictional part. So this is just, from my perspective, just the enabler which speeds up. I think governmental and public institutions very well developed. I mean, literally right now I see every country is talking about certain rules and certain enablements. I mean, how many times we have heard today also from the minister, from the vice minister, about Uzbekistan, about IT park, about other areas as well. So I would say yes. But I would just not wait for, oh, I have to be registered in the sandbox in order to develop. I would say everybody has a potential, even if you don't go directly through the sandbox. Just the region is great.
Thank you, Rafal. Azizjon, what would you like to add?
I just want to, like, one thing that I forgot to mention is, totally agree with what just, Natia and Rafa said. I think in terms of sandboxes, it's also important to think about commonality of standards. So for example, look at the European Union, right? You have GDPR, you have common AI principles that are accepted by all of the EU members. And if you look at our countries, Central Asia, let's just take Central Asia for now, right? What we can do is we can adapt the same approach where countries at least agree on ground principles for these foundational technologies. So let me give you a specific example, right? In Tajikistan's national AI strategy, one way where we differentiated ourselves is that we dedicated a whole section to principles and ethics of AI. That every algorithm that's deployed needs to be fair, needs to be transparent, and needs to be interpretable. That means that these are the foundational standards that regulators need to adapt when they're evaluating AI algorithms. So now we want to take the initiative of proposing these common AI standards on the Central Asian level. We spoke to our Uzbek friends, we got some support. We're now speaking to our Kazakh friends, and if that's the initiative that passes, that would be an example of how, if you're a company that's trying to test in one place, you can at least have commonality and quick scale across the region. That's how we can win on a global level, because the market is bigger as opposed to one specific market.
Thank you, Azizjon. Do the audience want to ask some more questions?
You gotta offer them coffee, I think that's
what. I can offer you coffee, yeah. If there are no questions from the audience, I would like to thank our speakers, our panelists. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you, guests, for staying till the very end with us. It's 7 p.m. already. On behalf of StrategEast, I would like to thank you all for being here today. We will be happy to see you again next year in another destination. And thank you, panelists. It was very nice hearing your experience and your stories. Thank you a lot.